Okay, friends. Wow, this Gemini new moon is a big one. It asks us the question, do we have the courage for clarity? Do we have the willingness to hold clarity? Even if we don't like what we're clear about, are we willing to stand in it? Bit of a continuation from the last full moon where I talked about this at the Sagittarius full moon. So there's a bit of a theme going on as these two connect. So if you missed that, definitely check that out. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Kay Moon, and I'm a Western astrologer and twin flame channel. And this is part two to the Way Shower update, specifically designed for divine counterparts, soulmates, and twin flames. This Gemini new moon is taking place at the 24th degree of Gemini with some very interesting aspects. We see a T-square in the sky from Nessus and Lilith. We also have communication from Chiron and Eris and Aries, as well as communication from Haumea there in Scorpio, and Venus and Jupiter, as well as Mercury, all there, Venus in Leo, Jupiter and Mercury in Cancer, and Mars here in Taurus. What this lines up for us is a sky that's talking about are we going to use our flexibility and adaptability to hide out and try to continue to get things to go our way? Or are we going to use our flexibility and adaptability to find out how we step into a new timeline? I really like to see this sort of thing in the sky, especially for divine counterparts at a time like this, because I feel like this is what provides us the impetus to grow. It's these sorts of inflection points that say, hey, um, what are you made of when it's easy to stay in the old, but life is placing a demand on you doing the more challenging thing and stepping into the new. And in this case, we're talking a lot about new mindsets that are the baseline for new reality. Let's talk about how this is going to function for Juno, the divine feminine energy at this time. Your Juno retrograde overview from the last lunar update, the full moon in Sagittarius, is going to be the best place to check in about all the ways Juno retrograde will impact you over the course of this retrograde that goes through September. It doesn't come out of shadow until even well after that. So this vibration and frequency and the lessons of it are going to be with us for the better part of the rest of the year. I'll be dropping in with stories as we go, but I detailed 4 key ways Juno retrograde can play out for all of us. So you definitely want to check that out. It will be linked below and at the end of this video. One recent example I've seen of Juno retrograde's impact, since she's conjunct Pluto, which is all about power and fear and using our power to overcome our fears. One recent example I've seen of this is a call to take a bigger stand for what you know you're here to do. I was having a conversation with a Star Club member who kept feeling like the more she put down the work that she no longer felt guided to do, the more people asked her to do it. Have any of you guys ever been there? Where it's like, I'm trying to walk away from this, and you just keep getting sucked back in. To her, it felt like the universe was calling her back and that there was more to integrate, more work to be done, and Juno retrograde was asking her to do it. But I offered her an alternative perspective. What if Juno, spending such an elongated time with Pluto, power over fear, was inviting her to take a bigger stand in her power for what she actually is guided to do? And this is just the old template fading out, and the universe is just waiting for her to catch up with the dream that divine placed in her heart. Pluto's communication with Juno It's all about power for some. And this prolonged period of time with Pluto for Juno will call upon divine feminine energies to exercise right use of power in ourselves, in our connections, and in our communities. How is it right use of power to continue doing a piece of work that's no longer aligned with where your heart is guided? It's not. That can actually become self-abusive pretty quickly. So it's going to be important to not separate ourselves from ourselves with this one, because the opportunity for self-splintering is going to be available as Juno crosses over Pluto a second time, and then a third time upon her return in the sign of Aquarius, which is collectives. It's like fractalized energy. It's a beautiful energy, but we want to use it to step into leadership, not self-parsing, self-separation. Juno is also going to be sextile Neptune, Vesta, Saturn, and Pallas here in Aries. Neptune, Vesta, Saturn, Pallas. There they all are, speaking to Juno. This indicates a dedication to the expression of our higher self. With Juno moving away from these and in retrograde, so she's moving in this direction, they're all moving in this direction, so the semi-sextile is pulling apart. And this energy, um, where did I leave off in my notes? This is going to be for some where they turn away from who they really are. And I want to normalize that as an experience that some of us have on the way to homecoming. Sometimes a journey away from self is precisely what a spirit needs to locate and land what is the definition of true self. And as much as I hate to see that, because sometimes these journeys away from self can really take us into some very challenging places, right? Journeys away from self have us do things like accept jobs that we don't want, causing health issues because we're so misaligned, accept stay in marriages that are no longer aligned because we feel like we're supposed to, but then that creates other types of issues, either financial or mental strain. Sometimes we walk away from ourselves by being what everyone else needs, but never asking ourselves who we are and what we need, right? These options for self-splintering, what do you call, were you abandonment? Yes, that's the word, self-abandonment. These opportunities for that, for some people, are going to be part of Juno's journey with Pluto into the underworld, and then a return back to self as Juno crosses over Pluto that final time when she goes direct, comes out of shadow, and lands back in Aquarius later on this year towards the holiday season. So just know that if you're kind of witnessing some of that in yourself or in others, especially a counterpart, offer up some grace and just know that this circumstance, if somebody's self-separating, is actually going to teach them more than what they could have ever learned if they um, did it any other way. This is really about stepping into a bit of trust with the journey if this is what you're witnessing unfold. Now, that being said, there are others who will utilize this as a time of time out and reflection on what is my true self? Who am I really? When I have released all of the things that compromise who I am, because that's what Saturn is doing in Aries. When I've stepped into my spiritual truth about who I am, that's the Neptune in Aries component, and I've stayed dedicated long enough. I've stayed on the mat in the difficult asana, in the difficult pose. Who am I really in these moments? all of these energies here as Juno is crossing over Pluto a second time, these are the energies that are asking us to go into maybe a little hermit mode, perhaps a bit of quiet reflection about what's the truth about me, specifically when it comes to partnership. Our divine feminine energy is the capacity to commit to partnership. Ultimately, the road back is still going to be there, even if you go into quiet reflection mode, even if you go into self-separation mode. For some of you, this is going to happen with addiction. You might re-indulge or re-engage in addiction at this time. Again, no judgment. It's just part of the process you need in order to understand why that pathway is now closed for you. And then you come back into the light through this process. Okay. For those in reflection mode, like I said, the question is, what is true self? And it is easier sometimes to self-identify what is true self when we do go into hermit mode, when we release the noise of the crowd. And Aquarius does govern collectives, communities, the crowd. For some of you, Jupiter retrograde is asking you to turn inward. Juno retrograde is asking you to turn inward and release being a part of communities, especially for those of you for whom community work has been a lifestyle and an identity, where all of what you've done, all of who you've become, all of the way you source your validation has been through how you show up, who you give to, how you give, how much you give, your time, your energy, your mental bandwidth, your time, your home, your love, your money, your guidance and your teaching, that access to you. You may find as Juno crosses over Pluto that there's some sort of demand from your life that puts a kibosh on that. You're no longer going to be able to overextend as part of your identity. You're going to have to find self-validation from other sources and other locations. And mainly from within and sourcing your own power. So I know there's a few people like that. I see that sort of archetype in my uh, healing and psychic classes. We call that the out of control healer archetype, where there's just no boundaries around you for you to build your own energetic system up. So you're constantly running on emergency anxiety, leading to exhaustion and depletion. This Juno retrograde may facilitate some pretty significant wake-up calls about the need to no longer operate from that place. And so it's important to know, if that's you, if you have become, this version of nonprofit you, where everything is available all the time for anyone, this may be the wake-up call you need to say, yeah, no more. So if you're growing through that, know that whatever's happening right now is meant to help you resource your power from within you and your own self, just as being a spark of divine light incarnate, instead of from other people and their definition, view, and perspective of you based on how much you show up, how much you give, how much you contribute, being that community leader, etc. Okay. Big restructuring of power in the divine feminine energetic fields, and that's one way it can play out. Like I said, I'll be telling stories about this throughout. I gave a big overview of this in the last lunar update of the Sagittarius full moon so that you could understand the big picture. That's just a micro of the macro Go get the macro over there. We also see Juno in trine to Uranus, who is conjunct Ceres there inside of Gemini. What's unique about this is there's definitely some closure energy here and some opening of new timelines in a big way. You, my friend, are the timeline. It's imperative to be telling new stories. Gemini governs oral traditions, it governs mindsets, it governs the spoken word. And with Juno in conversation with the governor of closures, that's Pluto, and the governor of divine change, that's Uranus, this is a guarantee that you're changing, and so too is your counterpart. With Ceres in the mix, Ceres and Pluto together, their overlap is in closure and completion. So there's strong closing of cycles here in the divine feminine energetic field. This is a guarantee that change is on the way for both counterparts. The way you both operate in your divine feminine energy is changing. So in between the two of you, the parts of you that are giving provisionary of nurture, flexible while still discerning, receptive without being needy, honoring of your sacred sexuality, capable of shape shifting to be what the moment calls for. This is part of all of us that is undergoing a major change at this time. Now, because Uranus here specifically operates in extremes, for those divine counterparts who have been hanging out in the polaric energy of divine masculine or divine feminine, you listen to these lunar updates and you only feel like one part applies to you, only divine feminine, only divine masculine. You're never really experiencing yourself as holding both energies in a unified field. This is where you may find a flip-flop or role reversal in your connection. The runner becomes chaser, the chaser becomes runner, this sort of thing. But for those who are in a more integrated energy, instead of reversing poles when it comes to your roles, you'll find that you're reversing storylines when it comes to your realities that you're living, like moving from separated to committed nearly overnight, or moving from a tug of war in connection to simply no longer holding up the rope and stepping completely onto a new timeline when it comes to how you both operate with one another. While these changes can happen fast energetically or overnight, emotionally, let your third dimension catch up. And if for some, these changes happen overnight physically, like overnight your counterpart comes back, you've got whiplash, or overnight there's an ending and you're like, wait, what happened? Everything was fine yesterday. Give your emotions time for you to catch up with what happened in the third dimension, okay? That lag is a function of the speed at which Gemini moves and the dual consciousness nature of the third dimension. Okay, so just give it time, let things settle, let yourself integrate. We also see Juno in trine to Makemake, the shaman's asteroid. So we get a bit of a grand trine energy here. This is going to make it easier to take what we've learned from the journey and apply it now. So many people are in a new place when it comes to their connections because of what they've learned. Not about partnership, but about themselves in partnership, who they are, how they show up, what their needs are, what their core desires are, what they're willing to do, what they're not willing to do. As this aspect takes place over the first part and the final part of the Juno retrograde season, Juno trine Shaman's asteroid will highlight for us where we've grown and where we're still growing when it comes to how we show up in connections. This is going to be humbling in some ways, combined with some of the other aspects going on here. Huge spotlight may really show up for us, revealing to us why, where, and how we are, where we are in the arena of connection and relationship. Okay. And not just in one-to-one connection with counterpart, but also with family, siblings, cousins, neighbors, community, colleagues. The mirror is going to come 360. You're going to be able to see the connections. And many of my Star Club members, they're already making that connection. So shout out to you guys. I'm watching you make these connections in the way that you talk about what's happening at work versus what's happening at home versus what's happening with the counterpart versus what's happening in friendships. You're going, aha, okay, I get it. I'm the source of all of this. And if I want a different reality, I change me, and then everything outside changes too. So kudos to you. But this is absolutely what's behind this opportunity for epiphanic breakthrough, closing out of a timeline quickly and overnight because you get the aha moment, and then stepping into a new identity and a new reality when it comes to relating to everyone in your world. Okay. So know that if you're feeling particularly torn about some of the lessons you've learned, or where you are and where you're not, or who you are and who you're not, and it doesn't line up with everything going on in your connection, or it doesn't allow your connection to flow smoothly in the 3D, you've not done anything wrong. For many, you've stepped onto a new timeline as a result of some deep integration work, and now the third dimension is going to take some time to catch up. It's important that you allow that, but also recognize if there is a gap in the way you're showing up because there's lessons not yet integrated, integrating those lessons now through making new decisions. That's Libra, taking on new mindsets. That's Gemini, operating with new purview, new ideas, new community. That's the Aquarius component. If you operate in the new, it will force the third dimension to fold and start to align with that new identity that you're taking on. Okay. All right, now I want to speak to another aspect here to Juno, and that's Pholus, semi-sextile Juno. This is going to make the allure of the old comfort zone be so automatic. It's going to take effort to not fall into it. Capricorn is the tried and true, it's the established, it's the known factor and entity. Bolus there is toxicity. Because toxicity is sitting in the known and Juno is literally sitting in the new, that's Aquarius, it's imperative that we take the opportunity to recognize when we automate or outsource what we're doing to an old pattern, because old patterns at this time are going to cause a lot of compromise. And I'm going to talk about that more in both the Juno retrograde update in Star Club, but also the Pholus update in Star Club, so that you understand how to work with this energy without falling prey to it. Not just letting it happen to you, but you're actually paying attention to it like traffic signs. We also see a square to Haumea retrograde in Scorpio. Because I think actually this one, both Jupiter and Pholus have been in conversation. Juno is now in conversation with Pholus. With both counterparts speaking to Pholus, there has been a timeline collapse. I really want to mention this before I move on to the Haumea piece. In the divine counterpart connections on the whole, at the foundational level, the way we used to do things can't be the way we do them anymore. It's not possible. It's no longer accessible. Well, let me put it this way. It's accessible, but it's not viable. There's no more meat on that bone. There's no more marrow in that bone. There's no more juice left in that lemon. And trying to revive it is only going to make it so that we are holding on to toxicity, to rot, and it's time to let that go. Okay, so here's this square to Haumea. definitively closures of a timeline and a reality are echoed here. Home is in the sign of death, closure, and endings. And she's retrograde, so she's not creating anything here. She creates when she's direct. She phoenixes in Scorpio when she's direct, but retrograde, there's no new life being born here. Um, there's too much truth, too much clarity, too much pain in the past, too much toxicity in its repetition because of the fullest component. So understand that if you feel like you're moving through a death transit concerning energies, mindsets, patterns, frequencies, behaviors, and you're seeing that play out inside of the connection where something is indeed dying. It may not necessarily be the connection itself, but a chapter of the connection is 100% closing. And it's the chapter that sustained separation consciousness. Okay. And as I said, in our divine feminine energy, there are some who will need to walk back through the old to understand why it has to close out. And it's okay if they want to self-separate in that way. It's just part of the journey, part of the way their soul grows, part of the way they understand why doors need to be closed in 2026 to the past. Okay. Let's see. We have a loose sextile for Juno from Lilith here as well. And this is the edge of what she's going to feel from Lilith until she comes out of shadow in the late parts of the year concerning an unwillingness, inability, and absolute lack of capacity to compromise and do things not in the new. And so some of you are already feeling this sort of like, nope, 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 nope. I absolutely refuse. I cannot touch anything old in the way I've been showing up in partnership or allowing my counterpart to show up with me. It just doesn't work for me now. I'm not interested. I don't have the energy and bandwidth for it. It's not possible here. You may find as Juno slips out of communication with Lilith, some of that begins to relax, only for it to come back with a vengeance once Juno moves back over Pluto, comes back into a semi-sextile in communication with Lilith. Lilith is going to advance. She'll get into semi-sextile formation with Juno in October. And by that point, you'll be strengthened and fortified in why you cannot go back to the old. Okay. So expect this to be a journey when it comes to releasing an old chapter, especially those of you who have been in very, very long-term connections with your counterpart. I'm talking a decade or more. Expect this process of the unfoldments of moving on to a new timeline, the petering out of the momentum of the old, the density of the old. Expect that to take some time. Okay. And this year is the year where that happens. So, I thankfully, like I mentioned this over in the other lunar update, I've gotten some support in my world of late, which I am too tickled pink about. And in that support, having that support, I'm able to actually answer some new questions. And so I had a write-in question from one of my Star Club members that I wanted to share with you guys. I think it is an important question for this particular new moon before we talk about the energy for the divine masculine. She wrote and she asked, is anyone else feeling boredom right now? It's not like I don't have enough to do, but it feels like an energetic pause where I'm either outgrowing everything or things just don't have the same pull for me anymore. Yep, yep, yep. Uh-huh. Yep, absolutely. Yep, you nailed it. That's so well said. Me, I'm raising my hand right now as I'm reading this, and this is 100% a function of what we just talked about with the way Juno is receiving activation from the governor of closures and the governor of divine change. Where old timelines have collapsed, but new timelines have yet to be solidified, collectively, we may all be experiencing this in between, I'm using air quotes, energy of feeling it like we're in this sort of quiet time. So I'm going to invite you to reframe boredom if this is what you're experiencing. I'm going to invite you to reframe it as celestial and psychic quiet, and a period of underground work where the roots for your new thing are absolutely coming out of the seed, but there has been no shoot yet, or maybe there's just a little bit of shoot, but this particular type of plant, it grows really, really slow. Enjoy the quiet, because when the harvest comes, it's going to be big, it's going to be loud. She goes on to share, this is even reflected in my dealings with my counterpart here. Um, I've gone through phases where sometimes I feel really annoyed and I get bored of the connection. But this has been over a week of me wondering if this is even what I want anymore. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, that's a thing. It's a real thing. You're not crazy. As Juno takes this journey in present time in our collectively, all of our divine feminine energetic fields, as I mentioned, there may be a bit of a flip-flop on happening inside of the connection where the very thing you thought you wanted is the very thing you're now questioning if it even holds value anymore. And so take your time with this, especially given how long some of you have been in these connections, how long you felt what you felt, these sort of energetic, psycho-spiritual, and for some of you, past life and karmic release out of the connection of all of the shadow work, all of the deep soul work. That chapter, that season collectively has started to come to a close. Doesn't mean you don't still have stuff to be doing, but the work, if you want to use that word, the play is now in the cultivation of having, cultivation of pleasure, cultivation of third dimensional room, space, capacity for this to thrive. Okay. Now, for those of you who know, like, yeah, I actually, okay, look, I still got some shadow work to do, baby. I'm not there yet. Juno crossing over Pluto is going to allow you to wrap that up this year. But the connection as catalyst for deep penetrating soul work, for those of you who have already been doing that work, are going to find this a significantly less stimulating time. And it's important that as you walk through this, you're not quantifying and qualifying the experience of I'm no longer stimulated to shadow work as a problem. This is where you drop shadow work and you start living in love. You start living from light. You start living from release and ease. And that's not boredom. That's actually the universe saying, take a victory lap, girl. You did what needed to be done. This doesn't have to be so hard. Okay. She also writes, and another question, I long for in-person community, and I've been invited into a womb circle by a friend. I haven't attended because the way she describes it doesn't sit well with me. Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, that's exact. Girl, could you be more in the vein of this energy that's really well articulated and well put, with Juno moving through the sign that deals with communities, now retrograde, receiving again activation from the governor of divine change and the governor of closures and completions, For many in divine feminine energetic frequency, for all of us collectively, there is a collapse of previous monad structures, previous community structures, previous identifications that allowed us to plug into certain groups. We now have the opportunity to step into new groups, new communities, ones that maybe again aren't so deeply focused on healing, but instead are more deeply focused on Pluto empowerment and Uranus embodiment of change and growth. So, something to consider there as we continue to move through this year. I definitely spoke about this in the channeled messages for Divine Counterparts. But if you'd like to take this deeper inside of Star Club, we are going to be having a more extended conversation about the journey Juno is on this year, coming up this month. And I'd love for you to be a part of it. Star Club has 5 membership spots left. We've got 1 full moon, 4 new moon spots. These are the spots that come with readings. The full moon membership is $333 for 3 half-hour readings. The new moon membership is $433 for 3 half-hour readings. The difference between the two is the full moon readings are done in community so that I can teach while I'm also reading after your session. And the new moon spots are private as you're accustomed to, just me and you. But if you just want the information, you don't need a reading, join the Stellium membership. It's $22 a month. You have amazing community. Like the person who wrote in that question, I love my Star Club community. Y'all ask the smartest questions. I swear y'all elevate my teaching game 100% because you ask such savvy questions. We're going to do the Gemini New Moon Lunar Circle tomorrow. I'm recording this on Wednesday. Lunar Circle is Thursday. Recording will be available if you'd like to go there. But I'm going to be taking this much deeper dive on Pholus in Capricorn on Saturday. I think it will serve you to be there if you know you and your counterpart keep looping in old circles. I think that's a conversation that will serve you to have, especially if you can deduce where in the chart you need to be honoring that change is upon you. And then we're going to do this Juno retrograde live coming up here on June 19th. That's next Friday. I'm going to walk you through all 12 signs that you understand where this timeline shift is taking place, both in your chart and your counterpart's chart. And for those of you who have a union chart, you're going to see how this energy is taking place in that chart and what the connection itself is stepping into in terms of divine feminine energetic shift. Again, you don't have to get readings from me. You can piece all of this together with a Stellium membership for $22 a month. This Juno retrograde, the Pholus in Capricorn, and then we're also going to do Jupiter, divine masculine energy, in all 12 signs because Jupiter's moving into Leo on July 11th. These 3 alone are worth the price of admission. This is what's going to help you calibrate correctly to the new timeline instead of wading into the energy and guessing what it's about. I'm going to tell you what it's about so that you can align to it in a way that doesn't hinder progress in your connection. Again, the link to join Star Club is going to be below this video. I highly recommend that if you're feeling like, yeah, I do need a little bit of extra guidance, you join. You don't have to join one of the spots with readings, but if you do, know that there's only 4 left for the new moon readings. They're $433 each, or $433 total for 3 of them. $144 each. That saves you $131, where if you're waiting for the half-hour readings to become available, you're paying significantly more, 23%, which I don't want you to have to do. But not only that, you're also not getting a date anytime soon. You only get to look at one chart, whereas I look at multiple charts when I read in Star Club, new moon or full moon. You want to pull up your kids one day, pull up your counterpart the other day, pull up an X another day to understand some lessons from that. We can do multiple charts in one session. You get ongoing Q&A in Star Club. You don't get that with a one-off reading. You get we get weekly deep dives, 25% savings on classes that I launch, plus community support. I really think that you should do this if you have been sort of wandering around in this energy, feeling like something's changed, but not sure what, especially if that's been going on since the beginning of this year. There's actually now only one, not two, one full moon membership left. That brings the price down to $333. You're saving $231, plus you're getting the benefit of being a part of the community. So I strongly recommend, if you've been wanting to get a reading with me, just join Star Club. It's the way to do it now. I've had to calibrate to my new timeline and what the universe is asking of me in terms of stepping into a bigger role with teaching and guidance. There are limited memberships left. I'd love for you to have one for this quarter so that you can make the most of stepping onto this new timeline with your counterpart this year. Link to join is below this video, but now let's go ahead and talk about what's going on for divine masculine energies at this new moon in Gemini. So there's Jupiter in Cancer. We've got the final stages of an emotional realization journey happening here. Jupiter has been in Cancer since last July. Huge emotional journey for all of us in our divine masculine energetic fields, now coming to a close. We see this is coming to a close with the semi-sextile to the new moon in Gemini. Jupiter's been on a huge growth journey since last July with deep emotional integration about who we are, how we are, why we are, the way we are, in terms of our emotions and the way we handle emotional patterning and partnership. With this deeper awakening through a conjunction with Mercury, there's a need to be flexible about how we proceed in connection for various reasons. But with Jupiter semi-sextile the new moon, while also trying Nessus there in Pisces, who's also talking to the new moon, and conjunct the governor of the moon, Mercury, this is the dawning of new awareness from the subconscious mind that's letting us know, hey, we're going to have to find a new way forward, and we're also going to need to strip it down a bit. What's the minimum that would allow me to feel like the situation is moving forward, like I'm moving forward? What's the core need? And this isn't about accepting minimums. This is about opening up and starting negotiation with the third dimension so you can get on the new timeline. Doesn't have to be the whole enchilada all at once. Some of you are going to collect your enchilada parts as you grow. You know, this month you may get the tortilla. Next month you're going to get the beans. The month after that you're going to get the chicken. And then the month after that you're going to get the cheese, right? But what's the starting point for this growth? What are the table stakes at this point? What's the root desire? And then how do I have the needed conversations? That's Mercury. And emotional connections and congruency, that's Jupiter in Cancer, to move forward with others involved to make it real. There's a huge opportunity here in our divine masculine space to find empowering ways forward if we can operate with curiosity, communication, grace, flexibility, all the light sides of Gemini. Now, in the shadow, this energy does lend itself to trying to ignore the call to the new and instead try to find sneaky, roundabout, in some cases, low effort ways to get our way if we're addicted to the old way of thinking, communicating, connecting, emoting, and the emotional patterning of the old timeline. Some of us really are addicted to our victim story in the connection. If you want your connection to move forward, you are going to act. The cost of it moving forward is giving up identifying your counterpart as a runner. Truly, you're going to have to give up that story. For some, the cost of getting your connection to move forward is giving up the story of yourself as avoidant. You're going to have to put it down. You're going to have to stop looking at your counterpart through that lens. For others, the cost of connection moving forward is telling a new story about yourself, about them, about twin flames, about connection, all of it. It's necessary to tell a completely new story at this time. And that new story is wanting to dawn in our awareness, but it's going to be necessary to let go of the comfort zone of the old. When we identify somebody else as a runner or somebody else as avoidant, or the connection as stuck in a duality consciousness called twin flame, what we get is an abdication from our power, an abandonment of our capacity to grow simply because the work is on somebody else. It's not on us. They carry the label. I don't. I did the work. They didn't. When we step into that sort of separation consciousness, it keeps connections on old timelines. And so I'm sharing that as an opportunity for a mindset shift, because when the mind shifts, so too does our reality. Okay. There's an opportunity for that here with this new moon. Okay. And transmutation energy. Slippery slope is, it's just more comfortable to call them avoidant rather than honoring that there's two of us here on this dance floor. If one is growing, the other has to be as well. They're inextricably linked. The connection and the bond is eternal. And so if they need to grow, chances are I probably do too. And that being said, this sort of idea that it's a one-sided growth thing can really hinder your capacity to solidify the new timeline. And so I'm sharing that so that as the mirror energy of Gemini really shows up in your own divine masculine energetic space, what you're looking at out there also has a correlate part in here, as above, so below, as within, so without. There's an opportunity with this new moon to go, aha, I see how I can unlock my new timeline. Okay. So wanted to make sure I detailed that for you. The conjunction for Jupiter with Venus there in Leo. This is the best energy for love of 2026. Oh my God. And in true Gemini fashion, it is the most fraught energy for love in 2026 because of this square to Chiron and Eris there in Aries. Part of a much larger ego restructuring we're going to do this summer. Why can't we just have nice things, universe? Why? You know, huh? Can I just have like, why is always gotta be growth? Can I just have some fun? Girls just want to have fun. Can we just have some fun? No, not right now. Okay, it's coming. I promise you it is coming. Okay. Together, Venus, Chiron, and Eris, all in conversation with Jupiter, mean that whatever comes up as expansion in love this week is also going to require some self-checks to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of setting ourselves on fire to keep others warm and then being mad at them when they refuse to do the same thing for us. This is a wake-up call from victimhood that every love story will need at some point. Self-inclusion is not optional when you want to have an equal partnership. It's mandatory. Okay. Now it's, two things are true. On the one hand, it's necessary to know that we're working with other people and they have to include themselves. And it's also necessary to know we have to include ourselves. That some way, somehow, it's necessary for us, in many cases, to orchestrate our own rescue in this energy and stop waiting for someone else to deem us worthy or overcome our self-constructed walls or dig us out of our self-created traps or slay the dragons that we refuse to go to therapy for. Yeah, I said it. I said it. I'm talking to myself too. This Venus-Jupiter conjunction to Jupiter, or Venus-Jupiter conjunction, receiving aspect from Chiron and Eris in Aries, is coming with a lot of tough love. And I think that's appropriate as Jupiter, not that my opinions matter. The universe doesn't care about my opinions. Here's Jupiter wrapping up its emotional lessons in water sign Cancer, making sure that we understand what emotional congruence and integrity is like before Jupiter pops over here into the sign of self-sovereignty, so that we can recreate ourselves with what we learned. Okay. In the light, we have a huge opportunity to change perspectives and open the floodgates for love. Like, wow, I learned so much. I transmuted so much. I can now receive so much. But in the shadow, we're also going to have some clarity about the story we've been allowing, the victim story we've been allowing to dictate our lives, not just in love, but in work, with teams, with family, with friendship groups, etc. It's going to be really difficult for Jupiter to escape the mirror, especially now that Mercury is about to go retrograde, as Jupiter is on the way out of Cancer and inside of Leo. Just so much holding our fingers to the fire. We also see that Jupiter is in a sextile here to Uranus there in Gemini, and it's Uranus sextile Jupiter from Gemini that's giving us realizations that we have a chance to open up new timelines in love coming through our divine masculine energetic fields, especially with Ceres conjunct Uranus. Close of one reality, open of a new one, close of one story, open of a new one. Of note, in case you missed it, both Jupiter and Juno are both speaking to the governor of divine change in Gemini, that's Uranus. Huge when it comes to quantum leaps and steps. When the governor of divine change has extended conversations with either one of these two, there is an activation for a new timeline unfolding for that counterpart. But because it's speaking to both, this has the potential to change hearts and minds and behaviors overnight. Now, I mentioned this when discussing Juno, but the same applies here for Jupiter as well. And I've been talking to you guys about this. Leave room for people to change overnight. Things can change immediately. They can change all at once. Let it happen. Don't be so stuck in your habituated story about another person or about connection or your belief that they need to change your way in order for them to be changed at all. Let that go. You're building your reality with your thoughts. They can change in ways that you never thought before. You didn't think was possible with this sort of placement. Don't let your identity be caught up in some sort of label. Don't let their identity be caught up in some sort of label. Uranus and Gemini is trying to rewrite stories. Let it. Okay? This has the potential to be extremely corrective in a lot of connections where energy has been imbalanced or repressed. But it's important for me to remind us all, including myself, there's nothing happening over there with them that isn't also happening over here with us. Not in a self-blame kind of way, but just remember where there's two people in connection, there's two people on the dance floor, there's two people with the opportunity to rewrite stories. Release fixation on the past. It's so important in this energy to release your fixation on what it used to be. The universe is working overtime with these aspects at these new and full moons to change what it was. The more you solidify, reinforce the old label, the old story, the old identity, the past, it's always been this way, never going to be this way. And if they don't do this, they're not really changed, they're not really healed. The more you solidify that, the more you recreate the old in the new soil and allow the cycle to repeat. Okay, last aspect, we've got a square to Haumea there in Scorpio for, oops, wrong way to draw that, for Jupiter there. This is going to be the final piece of the puzzle where we get the insights we need to understand what's no longer worth creating because we just don't have the energy for it. We don't have the fuel to sustain it. We don't have the interest to invest in it. As much as this is the last aspect I'm reporting on, it is one of the most important aspects here that I can tell you about. We need to pay attention to where we no longer have interest and where we are forcing it. This placement is revealing what's dead, done, and dusted, and as such, we need to let it burn so that something new can rise from the ashes. When Haumea, the creation goddess, turns direct in the sun, the only sign that can pull a Lazarus, that's Scorpio, the only sign that can rise from the dead. Just in time, she's going to go direct just in time for Jupiter to pop over here into the sign of children, inner child, self-sovereignty, self-creativity. That's Leo at the beginning of July. So where something is dead and done, let it go. If there's psychic quiet, let it be there. Don't pathologize that. Give yourself the spaciousness to know that if the shadow work journey is complete, that's okay. That doesn't mean that the connection is over. It means that the chapter is over. And rejoice. It's time to start cultivating a life that allows love to land with you in the third dimension. Okay, that's what I got. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, sharing. For those of you joining Star Club, welcome. I'm so pumped to have you there. The link to join is below this video, and I'm super excited to read for those of you who have decided to allow me to and join me on my new timeline with a reading inside of Star Club. Can't wait to do that. We'll talk more soon. If you have any questions about Star Club before you join, don't hesitate to reach out and email me. I really look forward to answering those for you so that you can be a part of this amazing community. Thank you all for being here. If you've got questions, you can also leave them below this video. I'm looking forward to including that new piece of our Divine Counterpart lunar updates. Let me know what you think of the lunar question segment. If you want to ask a question, drop it below. I'm going to try and include that going forward if you like that. And we'll talk more at the Capricorn full moon. Take great care and bye for now.